All right, greetings everyone. It is time for our first review of the FF9 collaboration. There, I got there. And we're going to be taking a look at everything Zidane today. We're going to take a look at the character, we're going to take a look at the weapon, and also talk about future promises to do with this character, mainly because Zidane, don't forget, we do have the box event, and those that accessory that's coming will be a bit of a boost to all three characters in some unique ways. So we're not 100% done yet. And what's there to say first other than Zidane? I think he is a great character, not an amazing character. Let's get one thing straight before we get into this review. I have positive things to say about Zidane. I think that he is a really good addition to the wind element. I think that he has some unique things that make him particularly really interesting to build teams with. And I don't think that people have figured him out in the first 24 hours on where he should be best. But essentially, as a frontline attacker with some interesting support skills, I think Zidane will have a really good future. And I think that Wind is a great place with strong characters such as Sadali, Beach Jaden, and also, of course, Flag Glassy, and maybe even June too. Like, it's still early on, and figuring out where this character is going to be best. The other things that have kind of been put out there is maybe Shawls and Soul in combination. Now, those are with some strong characters, so not to say that Zidane is doing all the heavy lifting, but I kind of alluded to that already. The fact that we're not looking at a broken character. So far, nothing from FF9 is broken, and I think, like, if you go out there and read some of the JP side comments, there's a lot of people who are doom and glooming it, saying that this is as bad as FF8. And I just don't see that. I don't see that in such a way. I think that FF9 is actually so far a really good collaboration. It's just nothing here is particularly broken, and it seems like people out there are really, really looking for broken stuff. To which I would probably refer you to wait for the new Helena. I would assume that Helena or whatever else is going to follow after with the actual anniversary Wotv event will probably have more likely broken style characters. But before I continue on with this review, I want to just take a little bit of an aside and say that with the 4th anniversary, the game's atmosphere, I think, is changing, because from now on, there's extra additional benefits to people who essentially whale on all the vision cards. Every single vision card that you get max from now on, it's a holo vision card, and to my knowledge, all new vision cards are basically holo vision cards. It is going to give a distinct advantage that is just probably not even worth considering about. I just think at this point with JP, it's really going to solidify even more the difference between the highest level guilds and anything lower. Like, there's a whale league, and then there's everybody else. Like, mid whatever. The overall cost of vision cards being up higher means, to me anyway, that evaluating the character for top level performance is just a little bit more devalued, as there is something that does act as a pretty big differentiating feature between those power levels. So, yeah. Next up, a slight disclaimer. I don't have particularly a good Thunder tank. I don't have Alphonse. I do have Bridal Elia and Thunder Astrius. They've been with me and being quite helpful for the last little while. I don't think that this is an optimal setup, but we're just going to essentially use tonight as a tester. Both June and Charlotte, I haven't 140'd, and I'm not convinced at this point that I would 140 them, but, just as a slight. So, talking about Zidane and building Zidane, this guy is a 100 cost wind elemental character, And depending on how interested you are in the future of Wind, that's probably going to determine whether or not you should really try for this character. Like, going all out for him, other than he's your favorite or you're just a big Wind fan, probably isn't necessary, because again, this isn't a this isn't a soul type situation for JP or a bridal Alaya type situation. This is, however, a very solid and powerful character. So as I go, next thing I want to say is just that this does have a little bit of the inherent problems of Wind. We still haven't seen the Nier collaboration return, which kind of always hurts Wind a little bit. And the other thing is that some other powerful Wind Vision cards are locked, at least on JP. On global, I think, or worldwide, they are more accessible. But for JP players, it's kind of a consideration on how hard you really want to build this character, since that does lock a fair bit of the power. But Zidane, overall, taking just a cursory look at his stats, I mean, I would say that fairly competitive, or more focused towards single target attacks than AoE attacks. Good attack power, good HP, good speed, all of that stuff looks fine. A decent amount of accuracy also in his kit. And taking a look at just resistances, he does have some stuff in his kit that also benefits him towards slash attacks and strike attacks. So the resistances you're seeing here are so accurate. Pierce is not necessarily great for him. And shooting, I wouldn't say is fantastic, but it's also not necessarily the worst. Magic, he does seem to have a general little advantage against too. But like the three types of things that he's particularly good against are strike, flash, and magic. And I think probably magic maybe a little bit more along with strike, but depends which counters you're running with him. Now, taking a look at his weapon, it's pretty straightforward. You're looking at slash attack up, you're looking at critical chance, you're looking at reaction block, and you're looking at some AoE resistance. And as I've said earlier, I kind of like the idea of the assassin dagger or TMR dagger more than this. This does give some bonuses and benefits which are good, but I'm less excited about this piece of equipment. I just think it's solid and good to build and have a copy of, but not necessarily what's probably going to be long-term best for him. As for his TMR is pretty nice. I mean, this is essentially an anti-physical barrier that you can put up on other characters as well as Zidane, and you're looking at 35% resistances as well as a fairly hefty accuracy boost. Accuracy of 30 extra, which is pretty nice, and you get some accuracy on the TMR, and you could potentially throw some more accuracy towards this character and have a pretty accurate character. Getting Zidane into his dream ability slash, awakening up to level 140 is pretty important. It completes his entire kit. It gives him more reaction block rate and acquired AP. In combination with AP down, makes him a very efficient character at not needing extra AP sources such as bells, which I feel like I haven't mentioned in forever, but there you go. Alright, so we're going to jump back down. We're going to be going up against this Thunder Elemental team because Thunder is particularly pretty good right now on JP with this combination. The thing I will say about it, I've seen some actual arena PvP battles. Zidane is strong in combination with Sadali and Zidaine for like a more magical based team, or he is potentially just strong in with Fly Glassy and Sadali. And I'm going to say that yes, Sadali and Fly Glassy are still really, really good, and that is absolutely helping out a ton. But it's not the only thing here. We actually do have, like, Zidane is pretty darn good at dealing some extra damage. So we'll get just some things going here. We'll get some abilities working. Slowly work our way over to Zidane. Some barriers. And now we're just going to take a little bit of a hint or look. And again, I want to fully stress that I do know that June as well as Charlotte are not optimal. So now we can take more of a look at his. And we'll start off with support skills. So support skills wise, his two unique ones are attack up and slash attack resistance penetration, 24% and 40 respectively, which is pretty damn strong. And critical rate up by 20 and decrease AP consumption by 20. Both of these abilities are just generally straight good on their own. They do not get upgraded. He also has access to Spy, which gives him higher movement, decreased chance of being targeted, and evasion rate up and acquired AP. So if you were looking to build him as an evasion character, you could potentially do it if you go the Spy route. As for Gurnspec's job, extra defense penetration and attack, or agility and strike resistance. Honestly, good selection of supports for either DPS or movement or evasion rate, whichever direction you want to take Zidane, you can do it fairly fluently here. Taking a look at, just feel like I'm doing that. Counter abilities, his main counter is a chance to counter slash and strike damage at 70% while reducing the damage taken by 30, which is pretty good if you know what you're up against. Gurnspec is a chance to counter with piercing damage, but not a super high range, and Spy gives it a chance to counter all damage with some damage back. But neither of those, I mean, like, personally, if you're trying for higher tier, you're going to end up against strike teams and you're going to end up against slash teams. That's probably the counter. All right. Into Zidane's Limit Burst, AP is only 43, which I think is not super high. Does give a 20% damage boost for himself for 3 turns, 200% mod. Pretty big range of casting, and also decreases his AP consumption by 30%. Now, normally we like the AP consumption on other stuff because, well, I mean, like, the Limit Burst is usually one of the highest costs you can end up doing, but since this does have essentially a damage boost, casting this early is probably generally. Now, jumping into sub jobs really quickly before we get into his main job, Spy is essentially if you want to go the evasion route. I don't think there's too terribly much. You get some poison chance, but most of the stuff there is short range. So Spy is really if you just want to do evasion. If you want Gurnspec job, well, that's a little more interesting. You can decrease pierce resistance, which could be helpful towards Flag Glassy, and maybe even our first Veritas. Also gives him some HP absorbing and a stun status effect, but unfortunately no piercing damage anywhere in the Gurnspec kit, which is a little bit sad to me. Now, a sub part of his main job has a confusion based ability and also a kill himself ability, which I believe is this one. You get one use of this. Oh, the way this works, look at that range, eh? Pretty fun. Basically, Zidane kills himself. It's like guaranteed of happening. Restore 30 AP for allies, and it's allies anywhere. And last but not least, restore 50% HP for allies. So if you had the re-raise on this guy and you cast this, it could be potentially a really fun way of, on certain maps, just kind of getting a free AoE heal of your characters no matter where they are. I could see use for this, but probably not something that you want the AI to ever be dependent on. Fun stuff. All right, the rest of his abilities, we'll go through some support skills first, starting with this one. So this one right here does not get upgraded. Critical damage up by 20 for allies. Single target resistance by 25 for allies, both for 3 turns. Wind attack up by 20 for 3 turns for self. Increased slash attack resistance penetration of 40 for 3. So pretty good there. Next ability is, we'll go for this one, his 38p, or TP, sorry. This is the does get upgraded. 200% chance to ignore fatal damage. So basically, his courage ability reduces magical damage taken by 20%. Grants following effects. If he attacks an opponent, he can dispel an opponent's ability to remove courage / surviving a fatal hit. So this is one of his most important ones. Thankfully, his AI is pretty good at casting it from. That's great news. Essentially, building an entire team around Zidane of courage-based units is advantageous because he can really support it with his better movement. He can also get closer into the enemy first and kind of cast his AoE abilities and catch multiple, and then your courage-based units survive, which is pretty nice. So those are his regular abilities. Then we get into attacks. We'll start with his job level 25 one, which is right here. This one, decrease single target resistance by 20 for 3 turns per self. Let's try this one just to see. So we're dealing about 5,000 there, comparatively 3,000 there. If I can put this at an angle, we can see theirs versus Glassy, and theirs versus Thunder Asterius. And Thunder Asterius is also potentially just smack us around a little bit. Really quickly, let's also show the resistances here. All right, that's enough of that. And also here. Okay, giving you an idea. Next up, we will go to isn't this one? I do believe, nope, wrong one. Is 226. So this one, single target attack, decreases critical evasion, also decreases critical damage resistance by 20 for 3 turns. Also another one. Let's take a look. See, how much damage we're essentially doing. Next up, 28 AP. Now this is his AoE ability. This one breaks physical barriers. Also launches another attack following a skill on target for 3 turns. Deals 165 mod. Decreases healing power by 40 and disables CT up for 3 turns. So a bunch of different stuff that he can actually cast, and it's pretty nice just being able to remove CT boosting. You're also getting essentially rid of physical barriers, which is quite handy for certain units that do not have that ability. And it's AoE, so you can catch multiple ones. And this is the one that you kind of want to throw on with that protecting immortal spirit or courage / ignore fatal damage type abilities. So that's really good. Now his other ones, this one very short range on it. His basic one, steal for the target, increase agility for himself, and I think the last ability should be very, very short range. If I can find it here, that is it's no, this is all right. So this is his other AoE, which maybe I already got that one. I'm getting a wee bit confused, but we've seen basically all of his abilities, so let's get into buffing him. And the first thing, I think we're just going to increase critical damage for allies. We're going to use his 32 TP and see how his attack grows. Meantime, we're just get everybody else just kind of doing all of their abilities. We want to make sure that they're nice and strong, ready for the potential pummeling that will show up very soon. Not exactly a super great thing there, but it's fine. It's fine. Alright, now we get another turn with Zidane. We have a little bit of buff. We also have his limit burst. There's a little bit of a hint towards the map, so taking a look at what he is doing to some of the other units across here with his limit burst. Decent, not too terribly amazing, but again, as we've said earlier, once you start getting this kind of stuff, you do have to cast certain abilities. Barrier Breaker, for example, would just be generally better because a lot of these units, a lot of modern units do essentially have that barrier. So let's just kind of run over here, get slightly out of range, or put myself slightly in worse range for it. Okay, over here, this is where. And you can see those types of damages that we are dealing versus this. Bridal Elia is definitely one of the strongest units out there, and Zidane is particularly really good with dealing with her. Matchups versus Soul, who is one of the strongest characters in the game, he does struggle a little bit more with. It does kind of require us to get a certain other answer to deal with Soul. But Zidane in his kit does have plenty of ways of powering up his own attacks and attacks of allies. I think that it's pretty nice. He does have a couple of multi-hitters too, which are pretty good. I think the one that I missed was the decreased critical evasion, decreased critical damage resistance. No, I talked about that one, but it is a multi-hit ability, which is something that I actually wanted to highlight. He doesn't have the, select 2 different targets from an AoE, which is a little bit disappointing because that is something that I do actually want to see in a lot of units nowadays, just because it is so powerful. But Zidane is a unit that essentially, once he starts buffing himself, he gets that extra critical damage, the single target resistance to protect allies too, and in the case of right now, once we've gotten just even that single power up going, you can see he has a ton of single target resistance and a decent amount of AoE resistance. Probably could stack a little bit more. Getting through physical barriers, dealing damage is what he does, and then we also can just run his own protection style ability, which, providing he gets an attack in first against some opponents, he'll be protecting his own status effect, which is just all in one bundle here, and upgrading into EX also gives him like a 50 AP boost for himself. So all of that is just generally pretty nice, and I feel like my overall impressions of Zidane are just generally strong. I think that he is a powerful character. I think that he also will be a good addition for wind elemental people, for new players to the game. I think that good for PvP, good for PvE. Unfortunately, like, not necessarily the hugest AoE, so might not quite as fast. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy with it. I'm particularly happy because I ended up getting Zidane relatively cheap, which is always good in these games. But yeah, that's essentially a tour of Zidane's kit. Keeping an eye for how things will change. Oh, the game froze. That might be just the end of the video. I took too long, guys. Yep, froze. The emulator froze. Whoops. Kind of already showed up the limit. Anyway, I'm curious about how the future parts of the FF9 event will potentially change and bonus or benefit him. But unlike Squall, I don't feel like this is that type of situation. I think that Zidane is a really good, strong character that a lot of people will be happy with, including FF9 people, and curious to see what Vivi will be. So anyway, I guess that's the end of this review. The game has said enough. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Garnet's next. See ya.